as you heard, we got some distinctive voices from a male and a female, and they seem to mention my name and Gary's name. Well, that's what we thought anyway. So we'll review the footage and we'll find out if that's what happened or whether that was just wishful thinking. But it did seem.
Careful with Gary's head touch. If you turn around here, just in the centre again, guys. Here. It's a stairwell. I don't think so. That's just a light, mate. So that's
apparition from the right to the left. And you came through that doorway, straight through the door, and then through that left-hand side piece of framework there.
Mr. and Mrs. Davidson. We're trying to communicate with the Davidson family. Obviously, this is a couple of 200-300 years old, this property, so there could be spirits here from anywhere in that period. So.
Well, hello there, fine fellows and lasses of YouTube Nation. It's just me again, Dan from Dan's Haunted Cottage, reporting in, and this time with a story. I do have a little fox here with me. So, do you want to say hello?
Hello.
Just say hello properly.
Hello.
There you go. That's a big cheesy grin. Do you want to go over there and play with your toys whilst Daddy tells the story to the people?
But I want to let them know that we got new sofa.
We haven't got new sofas. We've had these sofas for a while now.
A black sofa.
We haven't got a black sofa. We've got normal material style sofas. I don't know what he's on about.
The man's are gonna.
No, that's a dining table that we're having delivered, isn't it? We're having a new dining table delivered. It's very exciting if you're a 3-year-old, apparently.
And it's
Pretty mundane stuff, really. Right.
and the
New black sofa. No new black sofa. I have no idea what he's on about. Right. What? Tell them what's going on with this black sofa.
It's in a van.
Is it?
I mean, it's in a truck.
It's in the truck, is it? Okay. There might be a black sofa in a truck somewhere on the estate, but there isn't one outside our door, and if there is, it isn't delivering to us. Right, so without further ado, I'm going to try and get into this story. And it all happened probably, again, on for 17 or 18 years ago now, so it's quite a way back in the annals of time. And it's to do with a zoo that I used to work at. It was a small family-run zoo.
Are you talking about Zebra on the Paw Patrol?
No, nothing to do with Paw Patrol. I'm so sorry about this. Anyway, you got to be quiet while Daddy tells this story, yeah? Good boy. So, anyway. No, because I'm telling the story. I'm allowed to tell the story. I need to tell the story. I need to vocalise what I'm saying. Thank you. Right, so where was I? So it happened around about 17, 18, 19 years ago. Who knows? It was a very long time ago anyway. And it was a little family zoo that I used to work for. And it was a very cute little zoo. Had an amazing collection of animals there. And it was a very friendly zoo to work for. And a lovely little zoo. Now this zoo had been there for quite some considerable time. It had been there for, or there'd been an animal collection there for a couple of 100 years, probably even more than that, truth be told. But the land of the zoo, the land the zoo was built on, goes back a lot further than that, as all land does. It goes back to time immemorial. So this zoo that I worked at, I had a friend called Jodie, and she was a zookeeper stroke animal entertainer. So what she would do is she would do all the shows and talks and just general zookeeping. And it's something that I did as well. That was what I was employed as well. So part of it, or most of our animal entertainment and shows, took place in a building called the Jungle Theatre, which was situated just outside the main zoo, over on, based on one of the better description, by a field. Now, there'd been many episodes that had played out in this theatre, and nobody could really put their finger on what was causing them. There was all sorts of things. There was movement, shadows, noises, knocks, bangs, smells, the whole shebang. But being zookeepers, we kind of really didn't take much notice of what was going on there. That is until the day that Jodie was over there after work. She was closing up the theatre, and she was just sweeping through because that's part of our part of our duties as well as zookeepers. Mainly, that is our main duty as a zookeeper, is cleaning up. So it's not as romantic or as exciting as it sounds, is it? Anyway, whilst partaking in her duties of sweeping the floors, she looked out from. She heard somebody come in to the theatre. Now the doors were open, but it was getting dark. And she just said, "Oh, I'm sorry, the theatre's closed now. I'm just cleaning up, and then I'm going to lock the front doors. There aren't any more shows to be had this evening. It's, the zoo is closing." Right, as I was saying, guys, before I was so rudely interrupted by Hazel to get a table in with her and the guys that were delivering it. So, as I was saying, there's lots of activity that took place in the theatre, but nobody really took any notice. And Jodie was there on her own cleaning up one day, and she heard footsteps come in, and she shouted out, "I'm sorry, we're closed." I think I've gone through that bit, haven't I? We're closed now, the zoo's closing for the day, Jungle Theatre is going to be closed, and I'll be closing the doors in a minute, the front doors. So she looked, she still heard the footsteps coming in. There was no answer from the other side of or under the chairs, as it were, because we had things like bleachers at the time at the back, which are kind of the sort of things that you find in America at grandstands. The seating that's built up and it's staggered in rows, and yeah, we had that stuff. So you could see clearly through it at the bottom. So she looked at the bottom, you could see through it all the way. Looked through at the bottom and she saw a pair of legs, black legs, or they were wearing some form of black stocking or what have you, with some shoes, and a cape, what she could only describe as a cape with a red lining in it. So she said, "Well, I'm sorry, and with this, whatever it was, stopped." So she looked down below, saw the legs again, thought, well, they're not going anywhere. What on earth's happening here? So she looked up through the top of the bleachers and she couldn't see anything. Looked down to the bottom again, saw the legs, looked up, couldn't see anything. All she saw was half an apparition. So she went round the back to where these legs were, and there was nothing there. It just vanished. She checked outside. Now, by this time, there shouldn't have been any public on site. There shouldn't be. It should have been completely empty. And she thought this was just a stray member of public that had left themselves in the zoo, or lost track of time and just wandered into Jungle Theatre. So that was one instance, and that's actually been documented in, I believe it's Betty Puttick's book, Hauntings of Hertfordshire. It's in one of those books. Now to my experiences in Jungle Theatre. Now, in the winter, in the summer, you did have little bits and odd things that went on in there. Things would go missing, things would be put somewhere where they weren't. And, the keepers would continually be looking for stuff that had been placed in a certain area but was no longer there because it had been moved to somewhere else. And it was just bits and bobs like that went on, which was quite annoying and aggravating, especially if you were running late and you had a show to do and you couldn't find the apparatus that you needed for that particular show. So that was one thing that they kind of took no notice of, really. It was one of those things that you think, oh, well, perhaps the last keepers were in a rush and, they didn't neglect to put it back. And it's not something the keepers would do. They were pretty on the button with show stuff. And everything would be left in its place because obviously they wouldn't want the same done to them. But anyway, they just shrugged it off as nothing. And then one evening in winter, winter's when it kind of really got active in there. And one evening in winter, I was on lock-up duty and it was pitch black. And I had this tiny little torch that didn't really afford much light. You wouldn't be able to even see a couple of feet in front of you, really. It was awful. But anyway, I did lock up. So part of my lock up was to walk around the enclosures, making sure the animals were all locked in, making sure that the doors were locked in different theatres and different exhibits and stuff like that, and just generally go around the zoo. And then I had to walk from the zoo across a car park, along a road, and then over to Jungle Theatre, where it was situated separately on its own. This great big, for want of a better word, it was a theatre, but it was kind of a great big aircraft hangar type thing. So I did my duties. I walked in, and the first thing I did was I opened the stage door, walked out onto the stage, walked down the steps to the front door, behind the bleachers, behind those seating arrangement. And from there, I would lock the doors, check the doors, walk around the perimeter in the theatre, make sure it was all clean and tidy and, you know, good to go. And then I would turn the lights off in there. And then what I would do is the lights, it's weird because the lights for Jungle Theatre are up by the end of the corridor. So I would walk in one end where the door was, and I would have to walk to the other end to turn them on and turn them off. So consequently, I'd turn them off, and then I'd be left with this little torch to make way along this corridor out. But at the end of the corridor where the lights were, there was also another door where we used to keep equipment and some animals. You know, animals would show animals, really. And so I'd check them, and then I would close the door. And the room that was behind the door was probably, I don't know, 10 by 10 maybe, and that might be a bit of a push actually. But it was a big enough room to keep the animals in it, and it was, you know, the heating system and everything else that they needed, their food and water and what have you. So I'd check on them for the night, make sure they're all locked in, make sure they're all fine and happy, and then what I would do is I would lock the door, turn the lights off, and walk to the end of the corridor with my torch to leave the building. Now, one evening I locked the door, and I turned the lights off, and I walked away, and I probably got, I don't know, 10, 15 yards away, and I heard, which was the handle of the door. Well, I was the only one in there. Nobody could hide in that room, nobody could hide in the corridor. It was a tight corridor, it was a sort of backstage corridor. So I thought, well, that's odd. So I walked back, and I put the lights on, and I unlocked the door, pulled the handle open. Sure enough, it was the same noise. Opened the door, checked around, became pretty paranoid, and then locked it. Thought there's nothing in there, I'll leave it. Pushed the door closed, locked it, turned the lights off, walked away again. Next thing, the handle of the door was going up and down again. So I thought, okay, I don't know what they're doing, but the first thing I thought of was somebody's playing silly buggers here. Now, I've been an investigator for many years before this, so it kind of sprung to mind, but I thought, know what keepers like. This is something, I don't know. I wouldn't have imagined how they would have done it, but this is something they would do. So, but why? It didn't strike me at the time as why would they do it? What would be the point of them doing it there at that time? So, I walked back again, and it stopped. Turned the lights on, unlocked the door, and I thought, right, this time I'm gonna, because I couldn't see because I was that far back. I could hear the noise, but I couldn't see the action. So I thought, right, what I'll do is I won't lock the door. I'll just leave the door with the key in it slightly or almost unlocked. Turn the lights off, and then wait and see what happens. So I did. As soon as the lights went off, give it about, I don't know, 5 seconds, if that. I heard. Now the handle was going up and down, like somebody the other side of it or this side of it was testing the handle. So I whipped the door open again, looked inside with the torch, nothing there, absolutely nothing. Then there were some knocks and bangs coming from where the stage area was. Couldn't pinpoint them to anything, so I just locked the door, turned the lights off. I did hear it on my way out, but I thought, you know what? If there is something going on, I can't do anything. There's nothing I can do. I'm just going to have to leave it and report it to other members of staff. So I reported to other members of staff, and one of them was a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, who since sadly is not with us any longer. And I loved him dearly. He was a great friend of mine, and I miss him lots. He was very young when he passed away, and he was a keeper there at the time as well. And he relayed the story to me before I'd even said anything about hearing those noises and seeing that door handle move up and down. So some people dug into the history, and there were some things we didn't know. Jodie had said that the clothing that this person was wearing, she said it was obviously a man. She could tell by the calves and the way he stood, and the clothing that he was wearing, she said, looked like a very old-fashioned clergy. Remember the clergy would have worn? It was sort of black stockings, shoes. I think I'm not going to say what I think she said because that would be misrepresenting her. But the shoes were black shoes, red sort of cape flowing with this red lining inside it and what have you, as far as I can remember. And she said that it kind of resonated with her that was, whether that was an image she... See, the thing is, you don't know, do you? You don't know whether that's an image she came with her own, or that's an image that was put into her mind by the person that she was or by the spirit that she was seeing, letting her know who he was. So she thought that it was a very old member of clergy. Now, what we didn't realise is that the Jungle Theatre itself and across the car park onto where the Birds of Prey field is now, or used to be, I'm not sure if it's still there now, I'm guessing it is, were both plague pits. They were both burial pits for plague victims of the Hertfordshire area. So there were literally thousands of, well, hundreds of bodies, I would say, put into both of those pits. And it was kind of unceremoniously burial. It was just getting them in the ground as quick as you could, because I think the mortality rate was, well, it was extremely high. So it was a mass burial, and that's not what we put it down to, but it seems to be that it configures that everything that happened there culminated and resulted in what she'd seen. Maybe not what I'd heard, but certainly what she'd seen, the thing that she'd seen, which would have been a reverend of the time, maybe giving, I don't know, last rites or doing a mass over the grave or just being there for the burial. So, yeah, or maybe he was a victim himself. Maybe, maybe he administered to these people, succumbed to it. I'm surmising here, but this is the sort of scenarios you envisage. So yeah, that was that. But there were other bits and bobs that went on at that zoo that were quite freaky, unusual, odd, I don't know. Unexplainable, don't know. But yeah, it was a great zoo and I loved working there, and I spent 5 years, I think, at that zoo. And yeah, it was great fun at that time. So that's the story of the haunted Jungle Theatre at a little zoo that I used to work at. And that's it, really. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it. You might think, what's he going on about? But yeah, I'm sorry about the interruptions earlier on. That's Fox and Hazel for you. That's what happens when you're at home doing bits and bobs, and they're at home as well. So take care, guys, and I will speak to you all very soon. Bye.